What would we know today if libraries had never existed? That would be a complicated answer, but what we can recount today in this video is the intellectual and financial commitment that the Arabs took on in order to transmit ancient knowledge and know-how. Libraries in Muslim civilization have taken on a long and interesting history that parallels the invention of paper. The first real paper, as distinct from papyrus, was invented by the Chinese, probably by the Han Dynasty, around 105 AD. This paper consisted of tapa, hemp, and pieces of clothing with wood that were pulped, pressed, and left to dry in the sun. It is told that the new discovery spread rapidly throughout China within 30 years of the announcement by the Chinese emperor, who probably wrote addressing someone. I'm sending you the works of the philosopher Hu Zhu in 10 scrolls. As I cannot afford a silk copy, I'm obliged to send you one on paper. Paper gradually moved westwards from China as new techniques increased production and paved the way for different and finer varieties. By the 5th and 6th century, paper production had spread to Central Asia, a region then under Chinese influence, where specifically silk paper was produced in Bukhara and Samarkand, two cities renowned for their production of high-quality paper. After the death of the Prophet Muhammad, the nascent Islamic Empire spread to Central Asia, where in 751, after the defeat of a Chinese military force on the Talas River, the secret of papermaking was discovered by Muslims. Some Arab writers report that the paper was donated by Chinese prisoners for whom it was written. And so paper came to provide for the needs and well-being of all mankind. Some Abbasid caliphs were responsible for introducing the use of paper in Baghdad, while Damascus historically was an important center of production and factories producing much of the paper purchased from Europe from the 3rd century. Later, production spread to Egypt and Fez in Morocco, where another production center was established, with at least 400 mills operating to process paper. It is believed that the amount of paper in Fez was so abundant that, according to an anecdote, when the Almohads conquered the city, the residents, fearful that they might destroy the graceful arabesques that decorated the mosques, covered the interiors with sheets of paper, making the walls appear totally neutral. North Africa, papermaking came to Spain, and in 1150 Al-Idrisi wrote referring to the city of Xativa, one of the paper mills of Europe. There is paper to be found nowhere in the civilized world and sent to East and West. The first paper document in Christian Europe is attributed to Sicily, which was for centuries under Muslim domination and in close contact with the Arab world. It is an act written in Arabic and Latin by King Roger, dated 1154. With the widespread use of paper, the new vibrant Islamic civilization stimulated learning, the growth of government bureaucracy, and the demand for abundant writing material. But paper was not totally accepted for all writings. For a long time, copies of the Quran, other works, and ordinary letters were copied on parchment for reasons of tradition. During the Middle Ages, paper production became one of the few large-scale industries, with consumption increasing dramatically. A letter written from Lebanon mentions 28 camels' loads of Damascus paper were sent to Egypt as one order. Obviously, the primary use of paper was a material to write on, but not only that. Arab merchants settled in China saw alternative uses, such as the use of paper towels, toilet paper, packaging to protect delicate goods, such as silk necklaces and coral, to ripe foodstuffs, such as Iraqi sweets or citrus fruit, and generally wrapping items bought in shops, pharmacies, and bazaars. Europeans were first introduced to paper in the 30th century through the Andalusian Muslims, who had established the first paper mills in Spain. The first paper factory for Europe was built in Xativa in Spain, then later in Fabriano in Italy, in France, in Germany, in England, and the USA. Due to the rarity and high cost of leather to make parchment, not everyone had easy access to it. Paper thus eliminated the problem, which became a great service to science and humanity, an honor that belongs to Muslims. The quality of the paper produced in Islamic countries was high. Individual sheets could be decorated with leaves, beautiful ornaments in different colors and different watermarks. The paper produced in Samarkand in particular was the favorite of experienced calligraphers because of its thickness and durability. However, the efficiency with which European paper makers expanded their product allowed them to dominate the market, not only in Italy but also throughout the Mediterranean Sea, leading to a rapid decline in Arab paper making. The way in which European paper was distinguished from Arabic paper were the watermarks or embossed seals that could depict the Christian cross, some living being, or a mark, all of which was considered particularly offensive to Muslims. This led to a reaction in which Muslims were forced to act against the growing domination of European paper. An episode that occurred in 1350 cites a letter written by the Sultan of Tunis to the King of Aragon, bearing a watermark of a griffin indicated that the paper had been produced in Italy. To counter the expansion of paper produced by the Christian kingdom, the Sultan issued a fatwa to abolish its use. Specimens of a very old paper has been discovered at various sites in Central Asia, where the extreme dryness of the climate has helped to preserve it. In 1900, a Chinese Buddhist monk accidentally discovered more than 30,000 rolls of paper in a cave in Duhuang, in the Chinese province of Gansu. The documents found included Buddhist, Taoist, and Confucian texts, government documents, business contracts, and calendars. In 1933, Soviet scholars found several paper documents among 76 Sogdian, Arabic, and Chinese texts discovered on Mount Mag near Penzikent in Tajikistan. During the reign of the Abbasid Caliph Harun al-Rashid, enough paper was available in Baghdad for bureaucrats to use it for record keeping instead of papyrus and parchment. In this regard, Ibn Khaldun wrote, "Paper was used for government documents and diplomas. Later, people used the paper for government and academic records. In papermaking, it reached a considerable degree of excellence." In Baghdad, papermaking and stationery soon became important activities. This vast availability of paper in the 9th century saw an extraordinary explosion of literary creativity in all subjects. New types of literature were born, such as cookbooks and short stories like the Arabian Nights, which were copied on paper for sale to interested readers. In addition, paper assumed a role in architectural plans, where architects and artists began to use it to draw up plans before the artwork was actually executed. This also stimulated a change in the arts, such as metalworking, ceramics, and textiles, as artists and craftsmen increasingly applied designs on paper. In traditional craft practice, the design of the finished piece was worked out and created, while a potter could practice sketching on paper before starting to decorate an important dish, while a weaver modeled her carpet with the designs she had learned from her mother. According to some scholars, the Muslims Arab practiced the art of printing 5 centuries before Johannes Gutenberg, the German inventor to whom the first movable type printing is attributed. But the Chinese possessed this knowledge as early as the 1st century. The oldest text in existence today is dated 868 and is a Chinese translation of a Buddhist text known as the Diamond Sutra, now in the British Library. About 100 years later, the Arabs also adopted this technique and printed texts, including passages from the Quran, generating a strong demand and growth in the production of manuscript text. Above all, the distribution of masses was towards devotional collection of prayers and Quranic excerpts, which could be enclosed in a medallion and worn. Hence, both rich and poor and less educated people were requesting them. Already in the 10th century, Egypt, which became the first paper mill in Africa, adopted this technique of printing text on strips of paper in multiple copies to meet the demand for masses. It is believed that the first Muslim library was founded by the Umayyad Caliph Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan in Damascus. Initially, the first small Arab libraries were part of the mosques and stored copies of books from Greek, Syriac, and Sanskrit manuscripts, and traditionally Muslims bequeathed their books to the mosques. Naturally, after the Arabs acquired the art of papermaking, the 3 major libraries arose: the Abbasid Library in Baghdad, the Fatimid Caliph Library in Cairo, and the Umayyad Caliph Library in Cordoba. Since carved images were forbidden, calligraphy became one of the elegant aspects of preserved Islamic books. In the Muslim world, there were public and private libraries, madrasa libraries, palace and imperial libraries, and libraries attached to hospitals. From the 10th century onwards, there was a proliferation of libraries and schools that were founded in Basra, Isfahan, Nishapur, and Ray. One of the oldest existing and functioning libraries is the Al-Qarawiyyan Library, founded in 1859 in Fez by Fatima el-Firiya, a Muslim scholar who dedicated her life to religious and scientific advancement, establishing an educational center that stored manuscripts on theology, law, astronomy, and grammar. One of the most important libraries in Baghdad was the Mustansariya Madrasa Library, founded by the 36th Abbasid Caliph Al-Mustansir Billah in 1227 on the left bank of the Tigris River. Many important legal scholars were appointed to give lectures. All the books stored in the royal library were loaded onto 130 camels and deposited in the magnificent library. It contained 80,000 rare and valuable manuscripts. The structure survived the Mongol incursion which demolished the splendor of Baghdad. The Fatimid Caliph were master scholars and bibliophiles. They were composers of poetry, copied texts themselves, and founded libraries. Caliph Abu Mansur Nizar al-Aziz Billah founded a library in his palace in Cairo, consisting of 30 rooms filled with books on jurisprudence, grammar, literature, history, astronomy, and chemistry. There were 200,000 volumes, of which 6,000 were on mathematics and astronomy, and there were 2,400 copies of the Quran. Some books had gold bindings with silver paintings. The library doors were open 24 hours a day for students. Also in Cairo, the Hall of Science and Wisdom was established. Renowned medical scholars attended its inauguration. Here it was permitted not only to read books, but also to copy them. pen, ink, and paper were provided. Doctors, logicians, astronomers, and mathematicians were employed full-time, and the Caliph invited these scholars for debates in exchange for pay. Students from Turkey, Zanzibar, India, and Afghanistan traveled to Cairo to study at the oldest university in the world. These received free accommodation and uniforms. The Persian library in Shiraz had 300 rooms furnished with carpets, accurate catalogs to help locate texts that were organized according to each branch of learning. The library in Tripoli under the Shia rule of the Mamu Ammar was a beacon of knowledge and literature, employed 180 emissary copists who were sent to all the cities to buy books. There were an estimated 130,000 volumes, 50,000 copies of the Quran, and 20,000 commentaries on it. The library of Ghazni was one of the best in the world. The city of Ghazni was the rich capital of a vast empire during the reign of Mahmud, who patronized the scholars, intellectuals, and scientists that attracted poets from all parts of Central Asia, such as Al-Biruni. Cordoba became the jewel of the Caliphate after the establishment of Islamic rule in Spain. The city had 380 mosques, 800 madrasas, and numerous personal and 70 public libraries. It was the city of bibliophiles, and inhabitants who owned personal libraries were considered important figures in Cordoba society. One of the most important buildings was the Mosque of Cordoba, which housed the largest university in Europe, with over 4,000 students, scribes involved in copying books, and books binders. An important figure in the history of Cordoba was Lubna, a woman scholar responsible for the production, writing, and translation of volumes, as well as director of Cordoba's library of 400,000 texts. The prestige of universities throughout Spain in all the cities of Seville, Toledo, and Granada led to a spirit of competition between the viziers, each of whom wished to attract more talent to their libraries. As many libraries were established and as many still live on today, preserving not only the written intellectual legacy, but also the echo of the vivid voices of those who frequented them. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this content, don't forget to watch the previous ones and leave a like and subscribe to my channel. Bye!